Hi, and welcome to a video on building writers. In this video, we are going to looking at a strategy that is going to be used in order to build strong writers in our schools. When looking at this quote, we write to taste life twice, in the moment and in retrospect. It really speaks to the purpose of writing, about capturing our thinking, our experiences in the moment, but also being able to go back and revisit our experiences, revisit our learnings, to share these experiences with others, and obviously to share it with the world and learn from each other. There are two different types of writing that we need to teach our children. The first is creative writing. This is poetry, plays, graphic novels, stories, songs, dialogues, blogs, movies. And then there's technical writing. Technical writing is normally used to impart knowledge. It's your training manuals, it's your instruction manuals, it's academic writing, writing for an academic journal, operational guides, legal documents. All of these forms of writing are valid and important, and we need to equip our children with the skills that they need to do these things successfully. We recently did a survey with our teachers where we asked, which writing skills would you like to improve in your students? This is a snapshot of their responses. Overwhelmingly, our teachers wanted our children to be able to write strong sentences. Looking at all the other criteria, one realizes that this is actually all needed in order for children to write strong sentences. They need to be able to use ambitious vocabulary. They need to be able to use punctuation and capital letters correctly. They have to have stronger spelling skills, and they need to understand the writing process. And obviously, we want to be able to read what they've written. So we're very excited that the thing I'm going to talk to you about today develops all of these skills, and it is effective and it develops strong writers. So we all know the Story Mountain. The Story Mountain is what we refer to in how we're going to develop writing, how we're going to develop a story. However, something that I have learned personally is you can't just wake up and decide to go and climb a mountain, because if you have not been training and preparing for it, and if you do not have a specific skill set, as I learned, you are not going to get up that mountain. So let's have a look at our little mountaineer. What does he need to be able to climb this mountain to achieve these goals? You have to have equipment, you have to have training, you have to be prepared and armed with certain skills to be able to climb a mountain. So vocabulary, this is, I'm putting it by a little kettle, this is going to help us make the nice, delicious, tasty Milo. What is that? Teaching our children to use ambitious vocabulary. Packing everything into our backpack is connectives, connecting sentences together with conjunctions. This is a skill that children need in order to be able to write a good story, to climb the story mountain. Our feet are taking us in new directions, and as such, we need to open and start our sentences with new and different words. So, openness is an important skill that children need to acquire in order to be able to be a strong writer and climb the story mountain. And then the last one we're going to focus on is punctuation. Punctuation is putting that stick in the ground, getting your balance, getting your bearings. It is what tells you the tone and the expression of the written work. It is also what gives you the breaks in the journey. So we're not just reading our story with one big breath of air, but we're taking moments to pause along our journey up the mountain. So the approach that we're going to be discussing is referred to as VCOP. Some people say VCOP. What does the VCOP stand for? Simply put, the V is a focus on vocabulary. The C is a focus on connectives. The O, a focus on openers, and P is a focus on punctuation. All of these are very important skills that children can use in order to be able to become strong writers and to write well. So let's look at each one of those elements. Here you can see a chart for vocabulary. Now, what we're wanting to do with vocabulary is get children to use more ambitious language. So they're not just saying everything is nice. We're going to give them options and different words that they can choose for nice. Obviously, looking at this, these are not all very easy words. The beautiful thing with VCOP is it's scaffolded and it develops from grade level to grade level. So at the top of our pyramid, we have simpler words as opposed to the bottom of our pyramid where the words are more formidable. Moving on to conjunctions. At a grade 1 level, you just want them using the word and. Whereas in grade 2, there are a few more options that they can use, all the way down to the senior primary, where they need to be using complex sentences appropriately, and their conjunctions or their connectives are a little bit more sophisticated. But we're going to get them climbing from level to level. Openers, grade 1 simple openers like the, my, and I, starting our sentences with some basic words, and finally progressing to more complicated ways of starting sentences by saying things like before very long and having decided. And you can see how we're going to scaffold our children's learning to get to that point. Next is punctuation. The almighty full stop. If we can just get them using that in grade 1, we can start using question marks and exclamation marks in grade 2, and then obviously it progresses to the senior primary where you're using the full spectrum of punctuation. I would like to point out, though, that there is no reason that children can't move through the levels regardless of the year that they're in. But this does give children a tiered approach, a structured approach in order to reach new levels and expectations. So what does this look like to the kids? How are they going to find out about VCOP? Well, every classroom needs to have a VCOP display. This is a static display that stays in the classroom for the duration of the year. Here you can see the openers, the words in the openers at that grade level are printed on doors because this is a symbolic way of telling children we're opening a door to a new sentence. The connectives are done on puzzle pieces because we are symbolically telling the children we are joining our sentences together. But teachers can really make their display look any way that they want. But it is something that is always referenced, always spoken about or spoken to the children. It becomes a part of their everyday life. When you're saying to children, stop using the same words, here are the different options that they can access. This is their toolkit set out before them. That's wonderful. And we know now there's different levels that we want to get our children to. But how does this happen? Is this just something that children stumble across? How are we going to get them to raise the level of their writing? Basically, what does VCOP look like for the teacher? And this is where it is super exciting. We're going to be using a document called the Oxford Writing Criterion Scale. What this does is it gives you a list of criteria at every level of a child's progress of all the different things that they should be able to do. These are the goals. This is the stuff we want to get them being able to do. So here you can see number 2 says, can control use of ascenders and descenders and upper lowercase letters and handwriting. It is in number 0.5 saying that the child can vary the structure of sentences to interest the reader. For example, they're using questions, direct speech, or opening with a subordinate clause. These are all goals that we want to work towards with our children. It's very specific skills that children need to be able to be good writers. So the teacher uses this rubric to evaluate a piece of writing, and then they set specific goals for those students. What does this assessment look like? Very simply, at the beginning of each term and each first day back, the first week back after a midterm break, we're going to do a baseline assessment. This entails the children write a letter, and in the letter, they speak about what they did over that break. The teacher gives no help, no guidance, no spelling, nothing. We want to see the raw basic skills of the children as a baseline that we can assess. So here's an example of some work done by children, both in grade 3, clearly both writing at different levels. So the teacher will then use the criterion assessment scale, mark that piece of work, then looking at where that child went wrong or where the gaps in their skill sets are, the teacher will choose 2 to 3 goals that that child will work on for the remainder of that term. So in our context, it will be about 5 to 6 weeks. The child will work on those specific targeted goals in order to raise the level of their writing. Then, after the midterm break or after the school holiday, they will do another letter. We always use the letter because we always want to be comparing apples with apples. So they do another letter, and the teacher does a reassessment and decides, do they need to continue working on these specific goals, or can they now move on to the next goals that are going to be high leverage in order to move them to the next level? So it takes a little bit of extra work in the beginning once you're getting used to the criterion scale and the assessment rubric, but it is incredibly personalized, it's incredibly targeted, and it is very specific to each child. These goals, also I'd like to add, are then printed on a card and stuck on the children's desk. So when they're working in literacy and writers workshop, they are constantly reminded that these are the goals they're working on. I'd like to give you a practical example of how VCOP can raise the standard of writing. I'm going to start off with a very typical piece of writing that we would get from a child, and it says, I have a dog, I take it for walks. Now we're going to rewrite that, but we're going to focus on vocabulary. I'm going to use wow words. So we call them wow words or chocolate chip words because a chocolate biscuit is nice, but if it has chocolate chips in it, it's even nicer and it makes you go, wow, this is delicious. So vocabulary and the wow words is what makes our work wow. So, whoopsie. I add some wow words and now I say, I have an energetic dog. I take it for long walks. Obviously, the use of adjectives differs depending on where children are in their journey and in their growth. So that's my V. Let's now take my 2 sentences and join them with a connective. So I'm going to look at my posters, my charts up in the classroom, and I am choosing even though. Now my sentence says, I have an energetic dog, even though I take it for long walks. Already you can see the standard of my sentence has improved. So that's V, that's C, and now I need O. I'm going to start my sentence with a different opener. I'm choosing, because I've looked at the resources available to me in my classroom, and now my sentence says, I actually have an energetic dog, even though I take it for long walks. Wow, have a look at that. My last one is P, so I'm checking my punctuation. I don't want to make it a question. I don't want to make it sound like I'm shouting, so I'm happy to use a full stop. And yes, I have a capital letter at the beginning of my sentence. VCOP is done. So, a simple piece of writing, I have a dog, I take it for walks, becomes I actually have an energetic dog, even though I take it for long walks. Can you see how VCOP can be used to build skills and to raise the standard of children's writing? So, where does this fit in? We're going to go up the story mountain. How am I going to do this in the classroom? Very simple. The 2 boots that are going to take us on this journey is going to be developing these skills in Writers Workshop and in literacy. So in Writers Workshop, we are going to be working on using the VCOP in our written work. And you can join me for the next video. If you're a teacher watching this video, we're going to discuss the different ways that this can be used in Writers Workshop. Then in literacy, these are all grammar concepts and that we do in literacy, and you're going to focus on it. So you're going to have stations where children are during rotation, where they're doing work on adjectives, where they're doing work on their nouns and their adverbs, where they're doing work on punctuation and connectives. And this is already part of what we do in literacy, but what we're going to do is tie it all together now, our left boots and our right boots, to take us up the mountain. So that brings us to the end of this video explaining what VCOP is. In the next video, I will unpack how this can be used effectively from pre-primary through to senior primary in order to make our children strong, powerful, dynamic writers. Thanks for joining. Bye.